A member of parliament is calling for the setting up of an independent commission to probe allegations by former Attorney General Martin Amidu that government is taking advantage of ANAS's judicial corruption expose to cover up wide-scale corruption in government. He says Martin Amidu's claim must not be completely rubbished.
Indeed, what Martin Amidu is saying happened, then it would appear that the executive arm of government wants to arrogate to itself more powers than the Constitution gives them. If it is true, of course, that would shatter the whole separation of powers doctrine that our system that holds our system, the checks and balances. So nobody will have confidence in the judiciary, no one will have confidence in the legislature, or everything goes to the executive. So the oversight responsibility of Parliament will be taken out.
But ANAS's lawyer Kisia Jabing thinks Martin Amidu is being used to deflect public attention from the judicial bribery scandal.
It says it might be engaging in unlawful. How can you talk like that as a former Attorney General? That it might be engaging in unlawful and use that to just lambast the company? Come out with the specific evidence and the specific facts.
So who is speaking the truth? Does Mr. Amidu's claims raise questions of credibility that go against the Tiger IPI team? Should an independent body be tasked to investigate this? What are the consequences if indeed government is using ANAS judicial corruption expose to cover up corrupt government practices? This is today's big story. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Mr. Martin Amidu has been attacking the genuineness of ANAS's private investigations and objectives of his company, Tiger IPI, which did the investigations. He claims that Tiger IPI is a fraudulent company. He has been contending that Tiger IPI is neither registered nor licensed as a private, not-for-profit investigative company. He's convinced that the dummy company is helping the government achieve its propaganda objectives. But lawyer for Tiger IPI, Kisia Jabing, is challenging Mr. Amidu to make public evidence to back his claim. And Martin Amidu, a member of Parliament, Kofi Osei-Ameyaw, MP for Esojaman, says considering Martin Amidu's stature in society as former Attorney General, his claims cannot be washed away just like that without being investigated. He's calling for an independent probe into these allegations.
We should not look at Martin Amidu as Martin Amidu. We should look at Martin Amidu as a presidential advisor during the time when this incident or issues occurred. We should look at Martin Amidu as Interior Minister, and for that matter, Cabinet Minister. We should look at Martin Amidu as Minister of Justice and Attorney General. The Attorney General, who emanates from the current ruling government, is saying that the method that was used in getting the judiciary, the corruption within the judiciary out, when he was presidential advisor, when he was Minister for Interior, when he was Attorney General, that was not supposed to be the method that was to be used, and that ANAS methods, right, was, as it were, the executive trying to enter or overrun the judiciary and also the legislature. Now, you know, our constitutional arrangements is based on the doctrine of separation of powers, that each arm of government is independent of each other so that we can have the checks and balances, so that one cannot have powers over and above the other. Now, if indeed what Martin Amidu is saying happened, then it would appear that the executive arm of government wants to arrogate to itself more powers than the Constitution gives them. And for that matter, it is shaking the whole foundation of our constitutional arrangement. And if that is the case, then the judicial arm, if they are to hold a big stick over the heads of the the judges and the judiciary, then the judicial independence is compromised. And we cannot have the judiciary not being independent. That is our constitutional arrangement. So what is happening now with ANAS working with government to, as it were, to expose the corruption within the executive is rather troublesome.
But for now, this is an allegation that government has denied, ANAS has denied of it. Why are you placing premium on what Martin Amidu said?
Oh, it's not a question of just denying it. If by denying it is to say that Martin Amidu, the presidential advisor, the interior minister, the attorney general and minister for justice is, as it were, insane, and what he's saying doesn't make any sense. No, as a country, responsible country, we should investigate so that we can preserve the sanctity of the arrangement, our constitutional arrangement.
And who should do this investigation?
Well, if Martin Amidu is brought it out, there must be an independent commission. And there must be a body that should look into this. Otherwise, if indeed the executive is, as it were, moving into the arena of the judiciary and to the legislature, then we have a problem. Then we don't have separation of powers anymore, right? Then it means the executive is more powerful and they can control the judiciary. And if they control the judiciary, then when they say we have so many ways of killing a cat or skinning a cat, right? What does that mean? It means that if the judges will not do what we ask them to do, we would tell them what to do. And so if we have this corruption allegation and expose, and it is all, we don't even know the extent, it is all has not come out. So some are being hidden. So is that to say to the judges that if you don't behave in a certain manner, then we would expose you? I mean, how can we carry on in a country like this?
You seem to believe that what Martin Amidu is saying is true.
Oh, because of his position. At the time where he stood, he was privy to a lot of information.
And this has been denied by government operatives.
Oh, but they can obviously, allegation denied, we go through the process of investigation. Why don't you want to investigate?
Why wouldn't you
call people under oath to come and give evidence? To see what the denial is not under oath. Is it under oath? It's not. So you can deny. But when you are brought and you are sworn to say the truth, and if you don't, you can be punished, then we will be able to decipher from the truth and false.
Well, I'm asking, why wouldn't you rather impress on Mr. Martin Amidu the need for him to provide evidence that will support his claim?
Well, no, what evidence do you want him to provide?
Because it's put out allegations that has been denied by government.
No, what is the nature of the allegation? What allegation has been denied by government? Tell me, which part of the allegation?
Government says it did not collaborate with ANAS in unraveling these corrupt deals happening at the judiciary.
Oh, the government can say that through its spokesperson. But that doesn't mean that what the account Martin Amidu gave at that relevant time did not happen. So it is important that we investigate what happened at that time and let us discredit Martin Amidu through that investigation. But you people just seem to want to dismiss it outright without any due process. Why?
Would there be any danger for our democracy if this is indeed true?
If it is true, of course, that would shatter the whole separation of powers doctrine that our system that holds our system, the checks and balances. So nobody will have confidence in the judiciary, no one will have confidence in the legislature, or everything goes to the executive. So the oversight responsibility of Parliament will be taken out.
Joining me in the studio now is Malik Abbas Dabo. He is Joy News, my Joy Online editor. He's also with Joy News Political Desk. Malik, so take us through the article released today by Martin Amidu. I'm told there's a latest one just this evening.
Yes.
But let's start with what he posted today. That really angered the lawyer of Anas to speak that way.
Well, I mean, essentially, there are a number of issues he raised in this morning's article. Remember that when he issued Monday's article, he said there was a sequel, and he personally told me so. Exactly. He called me and told me there was a sequel, but he didn't think it was prudent to issue both statements at the same time.
Yeah.
So what we have today, which he issued this morning,
is what he promised on Monday.
Is what he promised, what's already there. Okay. He may not have responded directly to Anas's challenge to him because he had already done it. Okay. Of course, he may have tweaked it. But let's look at some of the things that he said. One of the key things he said in this article was that Tiger IPI, Anas's company, is not a registered company.
Right.
And let's read exactly what he said.
Okay.
Tiger IPI, which signed a petition for impeachment and complaints in the judicial scandal, and we know what this says, that after Anas did the investigation in the judicial bribery scandal, he submitted a petition to the president in respect of the high court judges, because that's what the constitution in Article 146 says that you should do if you want to remove a high court judge. Right. So those 12 high court judges that were alleged to have been caught receiving bribes, Anas petitioned the president in respect of them. Right. So Martin is saying Tiger IPI, which signed a petition for impeachment and complaints in the judicial scandal, is not registered in the register of companies in Ghana as a legal person capable of acting on his own.
Right.
And he says Section 15(1) of the Companies Code 1963 Act 179 mandatorily requires, quote, the last name of the name of a company limited by shares shall be limited. It has therefore always been a dummy. It has therefore always been a dummy and fraudulent scam on domestic and international public. The two companies in the register of companies with the sole shareholder, with the same sole shareholder, are Tiger IPI Media Limited. And note the difference here. Tiger IPI Media Limited with number CA 57545 incorporated on 7th April 2009, and Cobra I International Media Limited with number CA 57546 also incorporated on 7th April 2009, both for-profit companies which might also be unlawfully operating as private investigation organizations in Ghana without being licensed and permitted by the Minister of Interior to carry on business of private investigations and to employ any employees for the purpose of contravention. Okay, so the point he's making in this paragraph is that, first of all, Tiger IPI, looking at the documents that were submitted to the president and other public documents that he has seen, is just, the name is Tiger IPI. Okay. Tiger IPI, that's Tiger I Private Investigations.
Right.
His case is, what is at the Registrar General's Department is Tiger IPI Media Limited.
Right.
So he's drawing a fine difference between Tiger IPI and Tiger IPI Media Limited.
Okay.
So that's the difference he's drawing.
If you listen to the lawyer of Anas, he clarified that.
He responded to this.
Even though it's PI Media Limited, they choose not to bring Media Limited, but it's still the same company.
But Martin goes beyond just that. He also points out that the law requires that any company that wishes to engage in private investigations must obtain a license from the Ministry of Interior. His point is, when he picked the list of companies from the Ministry of Interior, there are 1,035 companies.
Right.
Tiger IPI is not one of them. Okay. His contention is that Tiger IPI is not licensed to undertake private investigations as it is doing.
Let me get onto the phone lines because Frank Davis is on the line. He is former president of the Ghana Bar Association. Many thanks for your time on today's big story. Hello, Mr. Davis. If you can hear me, you're on today's big story. I think we lost Frank Davis. We'll try and get him back on the line. Malik, let's continue with where you got to.
So he's saying that to the extent that Tiger IPI is not licensed to undertake private investigations, it means that Tiger IPI holds itself out unlawfully, fraudulently, and deceptively to the whole world on its site.
But how does he explain that? Fraudulently, in all the words he's using, how does he explain that?
Well, his contention is, if you say you are a company engaged in the business of private investigations,
right,
you must be licensed to do so. If you are not licensed to do so, being the consummate lawyer that Martin Amidu is, his view is, you do not have the right to even engage in private investigations. If you were to do so,
right,
you would have done so in violation of the law, because the law specifically states, and this is the Police Services Private Security Organizations Regulations 1992,
right,
LI 1571.
Okay.
This law requires that anybody who wants to engage in private investigations must obtain a license. He says Anas didn't obtain a license for this purpose.
We've seen some responses by Anas on his Facebook page. Have you been going through that?
Well, the curious, Anas has responded. Remember that when he issued the first statement on Monday, and there were 3 things that he said.
Right.
One of the things that he said was that Anas's investigation into the judicial scandal involving the judges was sponsored by government. One of the other things he said, in addition to this sponsorship or Anas having been commissioned to do this investigation, Anas was engaged in selectivity,
right,
and that some of the judges that Anas and his investigative team caught, they didn't put the information out there, that they picked and chose some of the people because some of the judges were related to persons in government, and therefore the investigators didn't want to embarrass them, so they kept those ones. That's to that extent they were involved in some selectivity. So Anas challenged him to provide evidence that, first of all, this investigation was commissioned by government, and secondly, there was selectivity. Now, in responding to the first one, Martin Amidu points out to Anas's own interview on August 1st, 2012, in which Anas told Peace FM that he was involved in some investigations, and that those investigations were the last wish of the late President John Mills.
Exactly.
So Martin Amidu quotes this interview Anas provided and said, as far as he is concerned, the investigation Anas was talking about in that interview that was Mills's last wish was this investigation into the judicial scandal. And his case simply is that when the NDC came into office in 2009, it has serious issues with the judiciary because a number of high-profile previous government officials that were brought to court, a lot of them were discharged. The Yana alleged killers were discharged. Tarzan and Kojom Pieni were discharged. Asabwa, all of these people, the government had serious issues with the judiciary. Anytime there were questions about the integrity of the judiciary, the response was, give us evidence. So Martin Amidu's case is that because government was concerned about finding evidence to nail the judiciary and deal with this perception, Anas was commissioned to do this work. Anas's case is that is not true. And Anas' argument is that that interview he granted to Peace FM talking about Mills's last wish, the investigations he was actually talking about was soul takers. That is the investigation at the DVLA.
But let's look at the new response by Martin Amidu. I think I saw a headline saying that Anas accepts that he's paid.
He's commissioned by government and he's a paid agent.
Is that what Martin's new response suggests? Precisely,
because in Anas's response, he stated clearly, as he stated in Monday's response, that any time that Tiger IPI has been engaged by government, they have put the information out there. So Martin Amidu is pointing out to that and saying, but you are confirming the allegation I am making that you are a paid agent of the state. And that the state is using you to find evidence that it wants to use against persons. Remember that Martin Amidu's core argument is that the government is using the judicial scandal to cover up or mask corruption in the executive.
But it's two different things. If you listen to what the lawyer of Anas said, he said that if for instance, he gave the example that if, for instance, Coca-Cola comes to you and say, I'm sensing that my employers or my employees are in ABCD and I want you to investigate for me, does that make you in bed with government or something like that? So I think he's trying to make the point that, yes, government can come to them and task them to do a certain job, but even that's not they don't charge. It's not everything that they charge. I think for the benefits of this discussion, maybe we should listen to the lawyer once again.
Can I just respond to that? In fact, Martin Amidu points out in this statement that it is not only when one is paid physical cash that one is an agent.
Okay.
So he draws a fine balance and says it may entirely be the case that you haven't been paid any physical cash, but the definition
let me
of
go
an
on to the
agent,
phone line where Frank Davis is. He is a former Greater Accra Regional President of the Ghana Bar Association. Frank Davis, what are your thoughts on the back and forth of Martin Anas and his lawyer and Kweku Bako?
Well, good evening. Good evening to your viewers, listeners, whoever. It's a sad commentary for me. You know, these are great anti-corruption crusaders in this country, and what is going on is not pleasant. It is not pleasant. I wish it never happened, but what can you do? Well, I mean, allegations are being thrown left, right, center. We can only pray and wish that it's substantiated. You know, I mean, going more bluntly, you know, a personality like Martin Amidu, I mean, over the years, he has proven that he's a very cautious person, and he doesn't do things just off the cuff. I would rather wish that we all allow whatever is going on to get to its very final conclusion, that we can know who is actually saying what and who is saying otherwise.
So in the event that Martin Amidu provides evidence to substantiate claims that, one, the documentary was edited to favor government, two, the Tiger IPI is illegally operating and maybe doing fraudulent job, and all the things he said, what could be the implications then? It
will have very serious implications, very, very serious implications, because the matters which have have been implicated and actually physically exposed. It's money for to prevent justice, basis of that. And the rest adopts and other criminal implications that come with what they are facing. If at the end of the day it is established, Martin is able to prove and substantiate what he's saying, it has very far-reaching implications. I cannot fathom what is going to happen. But
and what if the reverse happens?
Well, if the reverse happens, Martin has put his reputation on the line. I mean, you just can't throw these things into the public domain and think that if you are not able to substantiate them, I mean, you hang loose and nothing will happen to you. He is a lawyer. He should appreciate and understand what is going on. Because if the reverse is the case, then he also has a serious problem on his hands. Well, I mean, Anas is a lawyer. He's a trained lawyer. Apart from being an investigator, he's a trained lawyer.
Right.
He has lawyers. He obviously knows what to do. Okay. Because has also been damaged and tarnished in a way.
Right.
Even criminally now, the back and forth is not good for his reputation too. So, if the reverse happens to be the case, then Martin should also brace himself for something which is coming.
Well, many thanks to you. Frank Davis is the former Greater Accra president of the Ghana Bar Association. Malik, finally, you were talking about the essence of what Martin posted.
Yes, I was talking about the response to Anas's lawyer's case about whether there was some payment. And if there was no payment, then Anas is not an agent. Right. This is what Martin Amidu put in his statement this morning. I have read arguments on open source media in which promoters of dummy and fraudulent Tiger IPI argue that it collaborated with but was not paid by government for this and previous undercover investigations, as though payment of money is the only criteria for one being government agent.
So what could be the other source of payment?
He simply says
money.
No, he says that payment is not what determines whether one is an agent or not.
Okay.
That's his argument he's making essentially.
Okay. Right.
That if you point at to payment and said Anna has not been paid and to that extent he's not an agent, he says that argument is not backed by empirical reason. reasoning.
Okay.
And he cites a case in which this was decided in court. Remember, the former Ghana Bar Association president just said that Anas, what's the name, Martin Amidu, is a consummate lawyer, a respected one, as that a former deputy attorney general and attorney general. He knows what the law's position is on these matters. His argument is, if you have not been paid in the past, it doesn't mean one is not an agent. But as I pointed out, he's issued another statement responding to Anas, now saying that Anas must answer two things. Was Anas issued with a diplomatic passport in 2013? Anas hasn't answered that. There are other things he said Anas must answer. Now he's shifting the burden on Anas to prove that he's not what the things that he said he is.
Well, this is vis-a-vis Anas's lawyer also asking Martin Amidu to also prove. So we'll be waiting for both of them to prove themselves. This is today's big story. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Have a good evening.